Hey everyone, so we are going to be taking a look at the development of the brain. Now, amidst the convoluted nature of the brain, the very complex nature of the brain actually starts developing from a hollow tube, which is this, a hollow tube. And that hollow tube is called the neural tube. Neural tube. And this is about 3 weeks of gestation. Okay, so 3 weeks of gestation, this structure is formed. Now, after that, you have differentiation. This neural tube begins to differentiate into vesicles, which is this. So this differentiates to form this. Okay, and this is about 5 weeks of gestation. 5 weeks of gestation. Now, these vesicles are very important landmark in the brain. That means that these different points gives rise to the different parts of the brain. Okay, now it is very important to note that the left part of the brain controls the right part of the body, while the right part of the brain controls the left part of the body. Now, in another video, I'll be telling you which functions are controlled by the left and the right part of the brain. But for now, let's look at the development of the brain. Now, this is an anterior view of the brain. And looking at the 5 weeks old vesicle, we are going to be looking at what they develop into in the actual brain now. Okay, so this first part is known as telencephalon. Now, cephalon actually stands for, is the suffix for the brain, right? Now, tel just means that it is at the top part or the starting part. Okay, so this structure actually develop to form this part of the brain, and it is called the cerebrum. Okay, so the telencephalon differentiates to form this part of the brain called the cerebrum. Now, looking at the next part, this part differentiates to form this other part, and it is called the diencephalon. Diencephalon differentiates to form two structures. Now, what are the structures there? These structures are embedded in between the cerebrum, okay, and they are called the thalamus and the hypothalamus. They play a lot of role when it comes to secretion of hormones from the anterior part of the pituitary gland. Okay, now the next part I'm going to be looking at is this part. Now, this part differentiates to form this part. Firstly, it is called the mesencephalon. Mesencephalon. Okay, now the mesencephalon differentiates to form this part of the brain. Now, like the name implies, mes stands for middle. Okay, so this makes up the midbrain. The midbrain. The midbrain. Okay. Now, looking at the next portion now, this is called the metencephalon. Metencephalon. Okay. Now, metencephalon, met stands for behind. So this is just structures that are formed behind the brain, and they differentiate to form two major structures, which are these and these. So what are the structures there? These are called the cerebellum. the cerebellum, and this is called the pons. Okay, so the metencephalon is made up of cerebellum and the pons. Okay, so I've done a little explanation on the different parts of the brain when I was talking about the central nervous system. Okay, so you can go and check that out. Now, the last part, this last part, remember we said that these vesicles are important landmark that forms the brain, the structure of the brain. So this last part is called myelencephalon. Myelencephalon. Now, it differentiates to form this other structure here. Now, it contains the medulla. You can say the medulla oblongata. It contains the medulla oblongata. Now, if you notice in my previous video, we talked about the three major parts of the brainstem. Okay, so you have the midbrain, the pons, and the medulla. Okay, so from here is the midbrain. These are the cerebellum. This is the cerebellum, and this is the right hemisphere of the cerebrum and the left hemisphere of the cerebrum. Okay, so that is that about the development of brain. So this is how the brain develops from a neural tube down to a fully functional brain.